I'm here. So I'm gonna wait until it's actually 9 o'clock to really get started. Um, we're gonna try and finish up the Total Turtle Tote tonight. So those tuning for the first time, it is this pattern that was written by me, and Turtle Designs is the pattern part of my sewing business. I always also make custom bags like the one I'm working on right now for a customer. She ordered a bee themed Total Turtle Tote. So, like I said, this is a really good sized tote. It holds a lot. To show you one that is complete, I have the one I made for myself. And as I said, pretty good size. Now, actually has clear vinyl on the top so I can see what's inside. So, what I've been working on is a bee themed one that has embroidery on the top of the bag. I recently just made a Hello Kitty one. Hi, Annette. How are you tonight? So we are going to work on the rest of this bag, and as we say, let it be. All right, so I'm going to go over a few things. I've already done some preliminary work for this next part. So the next part is actually putting the handles onto bag. Now, in my pattern, I go over how to make handles, or I tell you, you could use 2-inch webbing. You can use 1.5 inch. What I use for the Haunted Mansion is 1.5 inch, but 2-inch gives it better support. And I can attest that bunch with the 2-inch, both with vinyl and webbing, and that's my preferred. That's cool. Zipper pouches can be fun, but sometimes tedious. All right, so as you can see, here's the one we've been working on. And these handles, if you can zoom in, I'll zoom in and show you. This is actually a 4-inch piece of vinyl, and I'll pull back just part of just to show you. So if this is the back side, so you can see where I have folded the vinyl over on itself, and then I stitch all the way around at an eighth of an inch seam allowance to top stitch it. And after I do that, I go every quarter of an inch to do stitching. And that holds that vinyl nice and secure down. Yes, it has that fold in the back, but you're not going to notice it. It makes it very sturdy. Like I said, I have it written for both ways in the pattern, whether you want to use webbing or you want to make a vinyl handle. My customer, I offered her both. I have access to honeycomb webbing that is 2 inches wide. That is from Dream Big Creations. But she wanted the vinyl handles, so I made the handle this time. So I have done the preemptive thing of going ahead and measuring 3.5 inches from each seam to place my handles. That's 3.5 inches, which leaves 4 inches in between each of the handles, which gives it nice support. If you see where your handle is very centered, and that helps support all the weight. So the first thing you do after you get your handles on there, we mark down 1 inch from the seam, and that's right here where I have done top stitching on the front, 1 inch down, and I make a line. Now it looks like I've drawn this on with a permanent pen. This is actually a silver marking pen that you can get from like Tandy Leather, Mormino. Um, you can get the Tandy Leather ones from Amazon. That's where I've got mine. And if you do that, then they will actually wipe off a vinyl without leaving a residue or a mark. So it's kind of like using chalk on woven fabrics, whereas you can actually take a damp cloth and get rid of it. It's the same thing with the silver marking pens. Now on the back side, I have, now if you're wondering how this is staying up, this has double-sided tape. I've put about 5 inches of double-sided tape just to hold it down till I'm ready to sew. Now, if you look, I've got little marks. These are actually, I'll go over how, where you space these, but these are for our rivets to add even more structure and stability for this bag and the help carry the weight. Hi, Dane. So on the back side, front side, we had the seam right below the zipper. On the back side, it's still a inch below the seam that we marked down. So we have, you can see that mark I've made across the back. So what I'm going to do right now, thank you, Annette. What I'm going to do right now is we're actually going to take this to the sewing machine, and I'm going to sew a rectangle at an eighth of an inch all the way around. I am. And we are going to go and go up to that line that I just drew, back down and all the way down again, making a full rectangle. And we're going to do that for all four handle parts. So I'm going to switch y'all to the sewing machine and we'll get started. So hopefully we should finish this bag today. That's the hope anyways. So as you can see, I have my top unzipped so that I can hold this flat. Thank you, Dan. I appreciate it. This is a custom order for one of my customers. They wanted a bee themed bag for her Copic to hold her Copic markers. Okay, and so I'm going to start on this handle. And like I said, I stitch at an eighth of an inch all the way around until I get to that mark I've made. So this is when we have fun fitting everything in the machine. Just make sure you put your presser foot back down, otherwise you'll get some weird looping on the bottom of your stitching. So I will say what I've always said about doing materials for the bags I make is that you want to make sure you don't have those that will crease a lot, because especially in the bigger bags that I make, I fold it to have it out of my way. I'm actually going to manipulate it a little bit so I can pull down the front so it's not in my way. It's quite as bad. Okay, and we're going to twist this, basically doing our pivot around at that line that I drew. Got random threads that are, I was sewing something pink earlier today. Working on a dance bag for my 8-year-old daughter. I'm about a third of the way done. I had to run too many errands today to get more than that done. So like I said, we're just rotating bag to make this rectangle. Like I said, make sure you put your presser foot down so you don't get any weird looping underneath. Now I started on the right-handed handle first, mainly being so that I could just not take the bag out of the machine. And I'm going to actually stitch across my basting stitch here to the next handle, because all this is in the seam allowance, so you're not going to see it. And there's already basting stitches from when we put in um, the Peltex. Now we'll do a little bit of a reverse stitch there. It just adds a little more structure. Right. So And some people ask how you know how a vinyl will hold up to um, moving around and all that stuff. I actually will kind of play with it a little bit before I decide on a type of bag I will use for a certain for play with the vinyl a little bit before I will use it for a certain bag. Not everybody thinks about that. And the front is a lot easier to sew. The front handle is a lot easier to sew than the back handle because you don't have all this bulk that you're dealing with. You just have the front bulk. Okay, now y'all get to see me change out a needle. Occasionally you have a needle break on you. So not a big deal. We are sewing through multiple layers of vinyl and Peltex and everything else. So it's not unheard of that you will break a needle. So I will just change that out and get a new needle. This is why you have a big stash of needles right beside your machine. Mhm. Won't be the first time, won't be the last time I broke a needle mid sewing or mid video. But that's not something that's necessarily predictable. So we're back to we're back in business. We'll get the thread threaded again. There we go. And we'll start that and go ahead and go from there. Oh, box corners are not a bad thing. They get take practice, but they're not a bad thing to do. Okay, I had my thread ripping here. That's nothing to do with the needle. Every once in a while, you get a bad spot in a piece of thread. So when that happens, I will just pull a little bit about a yard out. Let's just say I've changed too many needles. I'm more apt to drop it when I'm changing out my embroidery machine than I am on a sewing machine. So I'm actually going to trim on the underside where I have stopped the thread. So I don't know if you call it brave or just stubbornness that I say that I've never dropped a needle down the plate, but that would be the one time I would. So and said this is a thicker part of the bag at this point. So but this adds that nice stability. I mean, you probably could add more rivets and not stitch it, but I want mine to be nice and secure, especially for my customer. So I would rather have a little bit of extra work on my part over it not lasting like it should. Okay. Well, that's also why when I'm doing my ones for my embroidery machine, I will actually change all 6 needles at the same time just so I know that when I change them, I'm changing all of them. Okay. That side was to be a bear to be sewn, wasn't it? Trim some threads. Now we won't say how many straight pins I've lost many places. My husband says that if somebody's gonna find it, it's gonna be his foot. So not trying to be quiet, just trying to watch it stitch across that line so I make sure I'm in line with where I should be. All right, so we're gonna rotate one last time, and then we'll sew the front handle on, and then our handles are sewn on. And what we'll have to do, and I'll explain the next part, which is putting the rivets. Which I'm not gonna take y'all over to my press, but I will move my chair out of the way so y'all can see what I'm doing while I'm over there. It just won't be as close up as normal. Okay, and we're almost through this handle. That didn't sound good. There we go. Okay, we are done attaching that front handle. Or not front handle, back handle. I try to change needles. If I've done something heavy duty like this, a lot of times I will change after a project. Um, but if it were for like if I'm told just a lot of woven, I'll sew a week or two. Like I've sewn, and I'll be bad to say, but a lot of times I don't change them until they break, which probably is not the best way to go about it, but that's how it works sometimes. Just trimming some threads on the back from where our thread decided to be screwy, and we fixed it, but just trimming the threads. I'm actually going to go over one part real quick because it looks like that's where the thread actually shredded. So I'm actually going to go from the bottom up to that part. Hi, Paula. And never be afraid to have to stitch something more than once, especially if it's a structural element. I hope you're excited to receive your bag. And there, the back handle is attached, or sewn on, anyways. Okay, and I will trim the threads on the inside. That made me feel a little better. All right, so the back handle is attached. So now I'm going to tackle the front handle. And actually, it's a lot easier when you don't have that back. So if you're wondering about the double-sided tape, you can see where I have the handle shut down with the double-sided tape, but because I've been maneuvering it around, it is coming up slightly, but the good thing is that it's not come up fully, so it's not a problem. So as you can see, I can turn the bag completely inside out to do the front side a lot easier than the back side. So a lot of times I will wait to put one handle on until I've completed the other handle, mainly because as you see, some of the double-sided tape is coming up. The stickiness is not staying. Um, but just to move things along tonight, I went ahead and put it on both sides because I knew I could get it to stay, or at least enough where I needed it to. Okay, so we are sewing our second handle on. And yet again, we're sewing our rectangle on at an eighth of an inch seam allowance.